A young black teen, polite, quiet, sitting exactly where his ticket said first class. But within minutes, he was pulled off the plane. No warning, no explanation, just one flight attendant, one assumption that he didn't belong there. What they didn't know? His mother wasn't far behind. And she didn't come to argue. She came to ground the entire flight. She didn't scream, she didn't beg. She simply said, "This plane isn't going anywhere." What happened next became one of the most talked about moments in airline history. But this isn't just about a seat. It's about ownership. It's about systems. And what happens when the woman they tried to ignore turns out to be the one rewriting the rules? Where in the world are you listening from today? Drop it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe if you love real stories told with power and purpose. Now let's go back to where it all began. "Excuse me," the flight attendant said, her voice cutting sharp through the cabin's quiet hum. "This seat is reserved for our premium guests." The boy looked up from his book. A slim, well-dressed black teenager, no older than 17. His hoodie was crisp, his suitcase designer. The seat? 3A, first class. But to the woman standing over him, pale skin, tidy bun, clipboard in hand, none of that mattered. "I'm in the right seat," he said softly. "Oh," she chuckled, just loud enough for the nearest rows to hear. "I don't think so, sweetheart. This is first class." She glanced around as if expecting applause. A few passengers looked up. Most looked away. He calmly reached into his backpack and pulled out his boarding pass. The attendant didn't even take it. She waved it off like a fly. "I'll have to double-check this with the front desk," she said. "Sometimes people think they booked first class when it's actually basic economy." Someone in seat 4B leaned toward his neighbor. "Probably a mistake," she whispered. "He's just a kid." The boy folded his hands in his lap and said nothing. Didn't fidget. The attendant turned, walking back up the aisle toward the galley. From behind him a voice murmured, "Kids these days always trying to sneak up front." The boy didn't react. Instead, he reached into his bag again, slowly, and pulled out a paperback copy of Invisible Man. He opened to a dog-eared page and kept reading. 5 rows back, an older white man opened his iPhone camera. He whispered to his wife, "Something about this feels off." "Don't get involved, Dan," she muttered. "You always get involved." But Dan pressed record anyway. The attendant returned, this time with another woman. Both wore polite smiles, the way people wear gloves they don't like. "Sir, we've reviewed the manifest," the second woman said. "And we're not seeing your name assigned to 3-3. The boy closed his book, looked up. Eyes calm, unmoved. "It's there. Can you check again?" The second woman, her name tag read Shelley, tilted her head. "What's your name, sweetie?" "Jaden," he replied. "Jaden Vaughn." The two attendants exchanged glances. Shelley tapped on her iPad, her brow furrowed. You're not the person we expected in that seat." Jaden raised an eyebrow. "And who did you expect?" Silence. Shelley smiled tightly. "Listen, sir, it's not a big deal. We have an open seat back in 28C. You'll still arrive at the same time. Let's not make this complicated, okay?" Jaden looked past her, out the window, calm as still water. Then he said, "I'm not moving." A quiet gasp rippled across first class. It wasn't the volume of his words, it was the way he said them, like someone who didn't need to raise his voice to win. "You need to comply," the first attendant insisted, "or we'll have to ask security to get involved." A younger black woman seated in 2D lowered her phone into her lap and started recording, careful to keep the lens low. From the front, a man stepped into the cabin, tall, with silver at his temples and a pair of aviator wings gleaming on his chest. Captain Roland Finch. He didn't look at Jaden. "What's the issue?" Shelley turned, eager. "Passenger in 3A isn't showing in the manifest, refusing to move." Captain Finch frowned. "Sir, he said. "We're already boarding late. Let's not delay this flight over a simple seating mistake." Jayden handed him the boarding pass. "First class, seat 3A. "Confirmed." Finch barely glanced at it. "Young man," he said, "this could easily be a printing error. You need to go back to your assigned seat in economy. Now." Jayden folded his arms. "I'm not moving." Finch's jaw flexed. "Security," he said over his shoulder. "Gate 42. At the gate, 2 security agents were already en route. The flight attendants looked relieved. Jayden didn't flinch. He reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out his phone, opened the camera, hit record. "For documentation," he said aloud. "It's August 6th. I'm seated in 3A with a valid boarding pass, being threatened with removal." Shelley tried to snatch the phone. He moved it out of reach without blinking. "You're not allowed to film on this plane," she hissed. "That's not true," said a passenger in 1B, an older black man with salt and pepper dreads and a calm voice. "FAA says you can record anything, as long as you're not interfering with the crew." Shelley looked at him. "Are you a lawyer?" "No," he said. "I'm a judge." The cabin went silent. Even the captain blinked. Then, like someone had flipped a switch, 3 more phones came up. Live streams started. Voices whispered, "Wait, what's happening? They're kicking out a kid? He has a ticket, right?" The security officers arrived. "Sir," one said gently, "would you step off the aircraft so we can resolve this at the gate?" Jayden stood, calm, collected. As he reached for his bag, a text buzzed on his screen. The woman in 2D saw it flash briefly. "Stay calm. I'm here. Mom." Jayden smiled, just a little. "Let's go," he said to the officers. As he stepped off the plane, the captain muttered under his breath, "About time." Jayden paused, looked at him, and smiled wider. Outside, in the terminal, 2 things happened at once. The live stream from 2D hit 1,200 viewers. A tall black woman in a cream pantsuit stepped through the VIP lounge door, flanked by 2 airport executives, both scrambling to keep up. She didn't raise her voice, didn't hurry her steps, but the entire terminal shifted when she walked in. Her eyes found her son. Then she turned toward the plane and said simply, "No one's flying until we talk." The plane sat still, engines quiet, door open. A pause that wasn't procedural, it was political. First class had gone from peaceful to prickly. Tension buzzed just under the surface like a wire too tight. In 2D, the woman with the phone live stream glanced around and slowly ended the feed. "Somebody's gonna regret that," she muttered, sliding her phone into her purse. Across the aisle, a man in a tailored blazer leaned toward her. "Who is that kid?" he asked. She shrugged, but her eyes said something else. "No idea," she replied, but her tone made it clear she had a very strong idea. At the gate, the tall woman's heels tapped against the polished tile like a slow metronome of authority. Her voice clipped, spoke only once. "Is this your captain?" Finch stepped forward. "Yes, ma'am. We were just about to—" "You're not about to do anything," she said, never raising her tone. "Not until we clarify a few things." Behind her, 2 executives from the airport authority exchanged glances. One whispered, I know who that is," the other cut in. "And if you value your job, stop talking." Back on the plane, the murmurs kept growing. A young white man in 4C opened Twitter, typed a quick sentence. "Flight 918 just delayed because of some BS. They kicked a kid off first class for no reason. He didn't even flinch." He hit send. The tweet didn't go viral, not yet, but the one from @Montgomery2D did. She'd tagged it. "This kid was removed from first class for being calm, black, and 17. Boarding pass said 3A. They never even scanned it. Flight 918. Watch this unfold." Outside, a junior supervisor ran up to the woman in cream. "Ms. Vaughn, we weren't aware you were at the terminal today." She didn't look at him, just said, "Where is your COO?" He's, on a call. Take him off it." A gate agent, unaware of who she was, made the mistake of approaching with an apology and a plastic smile. "Ma'am, if you're here to support the young passenger, please know the matter is under review. The captain has discretion." She raised a single eyebrow. The agent stopped mid-sentence. Behind her, the boy, Jayden, stood calmly, phone still in hand, unreadable. "Baby," she said to him, "are you okay?" He nodded. "Did you record everything?" He nodded again. Her hand rested briefly on his shoulder, the kind of motherly touch that says you did right. I'll handle the rest. On board, Shelley paced the galley, fuming. This is ridiculous. Just let him sit in coach and move on. He didn't argue, the second attendant said. You notice that? What's your point? I've never seen a teenager stay that calm. That's not normal. Please, Shelley scoffed. He's probably one of those spoiled TikTok kids with rich parents. Yeah, the other said. But you know what scares me? What? I don't think his mom is some influencer. Shelley blinked. What do you mean? The other attendant peeked out toward the terminal. Because when she walked in, every suit in this airport got up and followed. A murmur ran through first class. I heard she shut down a runway last year, someone said. Who is she? Another asked. The woman in 1A, an older white lady in pearls, leaned forward, curiosity sparkling. She's familiar, she whispered. Is she an actress? No, said the man in 2B, opening LinkedIn on his tablet. He typed, paused, then turned white. Oh my God. Outside, the COO had finally arrived, breathing hard, sweating. Miss Vaughn, he stammered. This is all a huge misunderstanding. She gave him a long look, then asked, How many flights did Vaughn Capital fund last year through your corporate partner program? He blinked. Around 300, I think. 317, she corrected. Across 12 executives and 6 family members, my son being one. The COO swallowed hard. We can comp him a flight voucher and... No, she said. I'm not interested in vouchers. Inside the cabin, the door was still open. Everyone could hear voices from the terminal. One phrase carried through, loud and clean. Shut the door and this becomes federal. Passengers looked around. Shelley peeked toward the front. The captain stood frozen at the cockpit door. Sir, she asked. He didn't answer. Jayden stood behind his mother, quiet. She took out her phone. One call. 3 words. Activate standby clause. Then she hung up. The flight delay notice on the airport screens updated again. Flight 918 to San Francisco. Delayed, pending authorization. Passengers groaned, but no one dared speak up too loud. Not anymore. Because whatever this was, it wasn't just about a seat anymore. At gate 42, the tension had shifted. Not faded, shifted. People still stared, but now it wasn't at Jayden. It was at the woman next to him. Her calm presence felt heavier than any shouting could have. Ms. Vaughn stood still, phone back in hand, thumbs moving with surgical precision. Each pause seemed deliberate, strategic. Who is she texting? Someone whispered from behind the desk. The younger agent squinted at the screen. I think she just sent coordinates. On board, the pilot's radio buzzed. Not from air traffic control, from Ops Control HQ. Captain Finch pressed his earpiece. Come again? A pause. Sir, I don't understand. Yes, I did. The passenger. Yes, removed due to manifest mismatch. Another pause. His hand started shaking. Wait, what? No, I wasn't informed. Another long pause. Then a single reply. Copy. Finch turned white. He turned to Shelley. Go lock the cockpit. Don't open it for anyone but me. But what's just do it? Back in the terminal, Jayden's phone buzzed. He glanced. One message, one line, position confirmed, enter now. He showed it to his mother. She nodded. Let's walk. The COO saw them heading toward the entrance to Concourse B, restricted access. Wait, ma'am, where are you going? She looked at him like he'd just barked. I need to speak with someone who still owns their spine. One of the executives following her muttered, That's level 5 clearance. I am level 5, she replied without slowing. Somewhere, inside the airline's Atlanta Ops Hub, 4 alerts appeared on the command screen. UN authorized entry, the executed security authorized. Program match Violet Vaughn, authorization platinum level. Emergency access triggered. Exit privileges flagged, flight 918, incident in review. A junior tech stood. Sir? She just activated Protocol V3, the manager turned. What the hell is Protocol V3? Silence. Then, the tech whispered. It's the clause only one shareholders ever used. Inside the concourse, Violet Vaughn passed through 3 doors that weren't supposed to open without retinal scan, company badge, or VP clearance. She needed none of them, because she had something stronger. Shareholder authority. Jaden followed 1 step behind. He didn't ask questions. He'd seen her move like this before, at school board meetings, at Senate hearings, in boardrooms with men who ran Fortune 100 Seidhofen and still looked at her sideways. He knew the rhythm. Calm, assess, strike. But this was different. This wasn't a negotiation. This felt like enforcement. Back in the cabin, the murmurs continued. The woman in 2D had reopened her live stream. She's back there somewhere, she whispered. Y'all, I swear I've seen her in Forbes, or maybe it was Bloomberg. The man in 4C had found something on his phone. Oh my God, he said. Oh my God, oh my God. What? The woman next to him asked. He turned the screen. Vaughn Capital, minority-led global investment firm. Over $18 billion, 0 cents in assets. CEO, Violet Vaughn. Wait, she owns the airline? No, he whispered. But she owns part of the holding company that does. In the concourse, Violet stepped into a glass room marked Executive Control, Boardroom 2B, authorized entry only. She walked in without a badge. Screens lit up instantly. A lone figure stood by the window. Tall, lean, white suit, sharp jaw. Didn't expect you in person, he said. Violet raised an eyebrow. You think I'd let my child get dragged off a plane without showing up? The man smiled uneasily. I told the pilot to stand down. Too late, she said. The internet already stood up. Jaden took a seat at the side of the room. He didn't speak. Didn't touch his phone. But he watched everything. He watched as his mother pulled up a file from her tablet, titled Flight 9118 Incident Analysis Live Feed Archive. She played the video. Everyone watched the moment the captain dismissed the boarding pass. Watched Shelley say, "You people always try to sneak in." Watched Jaden remain calm while being removed. The executive winced. This is going to blow up, he said. Violet didn't even blink. It already had. Back on the plane, the cockpit door opened. Captain Finch stepped out, face pale, lips tight. He walked directly to seat 3A. No one sat there. He turned toward the galley, hands trembling. "Find the boy," he said. Shelley blinked. "You had him removed." "I know. I made a mistake." Shelley crossed her arms. "Oh, now it's a mistake." In the boardroom, Violet closed the video, turned to the executive. "I want the following people on a call in 10 minutes. The COO, the compliance officer, the pilot's union rep, and your legal head." "Why?" "Because," she said calmly, "we're about to ground the plane." At that moment, the departure board flickered again. FLAT delayed. "Awaiting clearance, out of order," passengers murmured. Shelley froze. "What does that mean?" she whispered. The judge in 1B leaned forward. "It means somebody way above your pay grade just shut you down." Outside, a notification lit up on dozens of phones across the terminal. Text only. Passenger was unjustly removed. Corporate action pending. Ground all departures until compliance is reviewed. Vivi. Shelley read it, then blinked at the initials. "Oh my God," she whispered. From the glass boardroom above, Violet Vaughn looked down at the plane, then calmly said, "Let's begin." Violet's voice filled the executive boardroom, not loud but controlled, surgical. The passenger was removed without proper verification despite showing documentation. He was not disruptive. He was not belligerent. He was a black teenager sitting in first class. Across the table, the COO looked like he hadn't exhaled in 5 minutes. "Our team didn't realize it was your—" Violet raised a hand, just 2 fingers. It shut him up faster than yelling ever could. "This isn't about who he is to me," she said. "This is about what that removal represented to everyone watching, what it reinforced." She tapped the table. "The plane stays grounded until I'm satisfied." Inside the aircraft, the captain was unraveling. Finch paced near the cockpit door, hands clasped, jaw clenched. Shelley stood by the front galley, fidgeting with her name badge. The intercom buzzed. "Captain, this is Ops. We've got a hold on your departure. Senior shareholder override." He pressed the button. "This is Captain Finch. Who authorized that?" A pause. "Violet Vaughn." Silence. The pilot turned to Shelley. "What did you say to the kid?" Shelley blinked. "Nothing serious. Just told him this section was for premium." "That's not nothing." On the tarmac, Jaden stood by the windows watching the plane he'd been removed from. "Do you think they'll let it fly?" he asked. Violet stood beside him, calm. "They'll fly," she said, "but not before they remember who owns the runway." She picked up her phone. "Connect me to San Francisco's destination team," she said. "They'll need advance notice. I'm sending a list of crew changes mid-air." In the command center upstairs, the COO's assistant entered, holding a printed list. "Ma'am," she said to Violet, "your office sent over documentation." Violet flipped through the pages. It was a copy of her family fund's corporate aviation agreement. Vaughn Capital, priority shareholder, Group A, authorized oversight on flight protocols Class 5, travel index score, 98, airline partner, Stratosphere Holdings, Skylux, and Aero Atlantic. The document was signed by 3 airline CEOs and time-stamped 8 months ago. Back on the plane, murmurs spread faster than turbulence. The woman in 2D was on her second live stream. "I told y'all, I knew that woman wasn't just somebody's mom, she owned somebody." A teen in 6C said, "Dude, my dad works at Vaughn Capital. That's Violet Vaughn. She once pulled out of a $300 million 0-cents deal because the hotel chain had 0 black GMs. Passengers gasped. Someone else pulled up YouTube. A conference keynote played. When you remove someone based on what they look like instead of what they paid, you're not enforcing policy, you're enforcing prejudice, and I don't fund prejudice. Violet Vaughn, 2024. Finch sat in his cockpit, breathing hard. The radio buzzed again. "Captain, you are now under operational review. Your flight departure is postponed indefinitely. Please prepare for deboarding unless otherwise notified." He exhaled slowly, then whispered to himself, "What have I done?" Meanwhile, Violet opened her briefcase. Inside, a thin leather portfolio and a velvet-covered card case. She handed one to the COO. The card read, "Violet Vaughn, Chair, Equity and Transportation Coalition, Senior Oversight Committee, FAA Civilian Advisory Council. I don't need you to apologize," she said. "I need you to explain." The COO was silent, so she continued. "Why wasn't his boarding pass scanned before judgment was passed?" The gate agent assumed." Violet nodded. "That's the problem. Too many assumptions, not enough systems." She looked at the screen showing Flight 918's status. Still grounded, still waiting. She tapped her phone once. Moments later, every operations team member got a push notification. Priority oversight compliance. Reset for Flight 918 crew. New staffing protocols pending. Full crew review within 24 hours. Authorized by VB oversight clause. Inside the plane, Shelley's phone buzzed. Her hand trembled as she read the message. "Crew status. Under compliance review," she whispered. Finch's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Unfortunately, we are currently unable to proceed with takeoff due to an operational hold. We apologize for the inconvenience." He didn't say why. Didn't dare say why. In the boardroom above, Violet stood up. "I've made my point." She turned to the COO. "You'll issue a formal apology, public, signed with names." "Yes, Ms. Vaughn. Your training program, getting rebuilt. I want unconscious bias protocols updated within 30 days. "Yes, Ms. Vaughn." "And this plane?" She looked out the glass wall. "I want it fully recrewed before it departs. Not just for my son, for every passenger who watched this unfold." The COO nodded again, dizzy from the storm he'd just lived through. Violet tapped her tablet. "Jaden," he looked up. "Let's go back to the gate." As they walked back, her voice lowered. "I'm not doing this because you're my son." Jaden smiled. "I know." She stopped for a moment, faced him fully. "I'm doing this because the next black boy who buys a first-class ticket shouldn't need a billionaire mom to be believed." He nodded once. That was all he needed to hear. And from gate 42, every passenger who had been watching started clapping. Softly at first, then louder, like someone had cracked open the ceiling and let dignity fall back in. The reboarding process began. Slower, more cautious than usual. Passengers filed back onto Flight 918 like pilgrims entering a chapel. No one dared speak too loud, not even in first class. But everyone noticed what was different. Shelley? Gone. The second attendant? Also gone. Captain Finch? Not even in the cockpit anymore. A new crew stood at the front. Alert, polished, diverse. 2 black flight attendants, 1 Latina. A younger white pilot who looked like he'd just finished military flight school. And in seat 3A, Jaden, back where he belonged. From the galley, one of the new attendants leaned down. "Would you like a beverage, Mr. Vaughn?" Jaden hesitated, then said carefully, "I'm fine, thank you." "No problem," she smiled. "Just let me know if you need anything. You're our VIP today." Across the aisle, passengers whispered like students trying not to get caught. "Is he with someone powerful?" "Forget powerful. I heard she audited the airline on the spot. Did you see her walk in here like she owned the building?" "She does." "Kinda." In the terminal, Violet Vaughn stood near the window, watching the last few passengers board. Her phone buzzed. Text from her general counsel. "Press teams ready. Statement drafted. Want to approve before release?" She typed back, "Send it out." Then she turned, heels clicking softly as she walked toward the security checkpoint exit. The airport VP scrambled to keep up. "Ms. Vaughn, thank you again for handling this discreetly," she echoed. He froze. She turned to face him. "Your crew removed a black boy from first class because he didn't look like their idea of belonging. That's not discreet." She stepped closer, lowered her voice. "That's dangerous." The plane door shut with a gentle thump. JetBridge pulled away. From inside, 3A stared out the window, watching his mother walk further into the terminal, slowly swallowed by the crowds. Jaden leaned his head back, exhaled. "Ready for takeoff?" the attendant asked. He nodded. But part of him was still back at the gate, watching the woman who turned one moment of humiliation into an institutional reckoning. Inside the airline's main PR suite in San Francisco, a notification popped up. "Joint statement released. Airsphere Holdings deeply regrets the incident involving passenger Jaden Vaughn on Flight 918. We are reviewing internal procedures and reaffirming our commitment to dignity, equity, and inclusion. Our sincerest apologies to Mr. Vaughn and his family. Attached to the email was a single, devastating image. Violet Vaughn in a cream pantsuit, walking away from the gate with a briefcase in one hand and her son's airline ticket in the other. The caption: "Sometimes power doesn't yell, it simply arrives." From row 6, a young black girl watched Jaden silently. She was maybe 13, dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt with an HBCU logo. Her mother sat beside her. "Is that the boy they kicked off?" she whispered. "Yeah," her mom said softly. "He didn't even do anything," the girl murmured. "No, baby, he didn't." The girl paused, then asked, "Will they do that to me too?" Her mom didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked down the aisle at Jaden in 3A. Calm, upright, not defeated. "No," she said. "Not after today." 6,000 feet above the ground, Flight 918 cruised smoothly west. Jaden sat upright in 3A, earbuds in, eyes closed. But he wasn't listening to music. He was replaying every word, every look, every quiet insult disguised as policy. He was thinking about the moment Shelley had hovered over him like he didn't belong, and the way his mother hadn't raised her voice, just her authority. He didn't smile, not yet, because he knew it wasn't over. In a glass tower in San Francisco, 3 time zones behind, the boardroom of Stratosphere Holdings was no longer calm. The CEO of Airsphere had just stepped out of an emergency call with legal. The head of investor relations sat white-knuckled beside her, and the chairman, red-faced, furious. "Do we understand who we're dealing with here?" he barked. "She controls 12% of our operating equity." The CFO replied. 12% of Stratosphere, someone whispered. "Not just the airline, the whole umbrella. Hotels, charters, logistics," said another. The chairman sat back. "Call her." The room went quiet. Then, slowly, the VP of Partnerships pulled out her phone and dialed. Across town, Violet Vaughn sat in a quiet corner office at her private workspace overlooking the bay. Her assistant handed her a glass of lemon water just as the call came through. She didn't flinch. "Put it through," she said. The conference phone blinked, connected. "Miss Vaughn," the chairman's voice came through, low, gravelly. "This is Mark Renner on behalf of Stratosphere Holdings." "I know who you are," Violet said, flat. "I want to begin by apologizing for—" "No." Silence. "I don't need an apology," she continued. "I need commitment." More silence. "I want full bias response training implemented across all brands under your umbrella within 30 days. I want passenger complaint systems rerouted through a third-party monitor, and I want a formal memo circulated to all staff reminding them that assumptions based on appearance are now considered a compliance violation." Violet. "And," she added, "I want Shelley Monroe terminated immediately, along with the gate lead who failed to verify documentation before removal." The boardroom on the other end had gone still. Violet waited. "You're asking us to set precedent," the chairman said. "No," she corrected. "I'm giving you a chance to set precedent." She leaned forward, her voice silk over steel. "Because if you don't, I'll divest all Vaughn Capital holdings across your subsidiaries. A beat. And I'll do it loudly." Downstairs in her office, Violet's legal team had already drafted a press release, just in case. Title: "When equity isn't standard, we withdraw." It was time-stamped, waiting. Back in the boardroom, Renner exhaled. "Agreed," he said. "On all terms." "Good," Violet said. "I'll expect an internal memo confirming actions taken within 48 hours. Then she hung up. "No, thank you. No, We appreciate your time. Just one closed circuit, and a world already shifting behind it. Jaden's phone buzzed in his hand. He glanced at the screen. All conditions accepted. You're cleared to sleep. Mom! He smiled. For the first time all day. Then he tilted his seat back, closed his eyes, let the sky carry him west. In San Francisco, a junior manager at Stratosphere Holdings drafted the email, "Effective immediately, all personnel across Stratosphere brands will undergo updated equity and bias protocol training. Supervisors have been instructed to report all compliance risks to the newly appointed monitoring agency." She hit send. Then she opened LinkedIn and followed Violet Vaughn. 3 days later, reporters were still chasing the story. The clip of Violet Vaughn at Gate 42 had passed 8 million views across platforms. The quote replayed on cable news all week. "The next black boy who buys a first-class ticket shouldn't need a billionaire mom to be believed." Commentators debated her tone, her power, her choice of words. Some tried to downplay it. Others tried to make it about privilege, but none of them could deny what followed. Because she didn't stop at the apology, she started a reckoning. At Vaughn Capital's annual summit, Violet stepped on stage with the poise of someone who no longer needed to prove power, only use it. "Let's clarify a few things," she began, no script in hand. "I didn't pressure an airline. I executed shareholder rights. I didn't make noise. I initiated system correction." Behind her, a screen lit up. Airline holdings under Vaughn Capital, 4 commercial carriers, 2 private charter firms, 1 airport operations vendor. Combined, 12.4% of U.S. domestic passenger volume. A quiet gasp ran through the room. She wasn't just a high-value client. She was infrastructure. In a parallel session down the hall, her chief of compliance revealed the numbers. 14 employees terminated across 3 airlines, 42 internal audits opened, 3 security vendors flagged for retraining, and 1 updated clause. Appearance-based removal must be supported by evidence, not assumption. The next slide was simpler. It was a map. Red dots across U.S. airports with one word hovering above them: influence. Each dot represented a gate, a VIP lounge, a supplier contract, a policy advisory board. One journalist asked later, "So, you don't just fly first class? You own the skies?" Violet didn't answer. She didn't need to. Meanwhile, Flight 918 had become a legend. Jaden had stayed quiet. No press, no interviews. When asked by classmates, he just shrugged. "My mom handled it," and then he went back to class. But others? They didn't forget. A young flight attendant in Chicago paused during her training. They were discussing discretionary seat enforcement. She raised her hand. "Do we verify tickets before we assume anything, right?" The trainer smiled. "Yes, that's called the Vaughn Protocol now." On LinkedIn, a former gate agent posted a long apology. "I was the one who let Shelley push that kid aside," she wrote. "I stood there and said nothing. I've since resigned, but I want to thank Violet Vaughn. You didn't just hold people accountable, you raised the standard." It received 46,000 likes and a comment, just one line, from Violet herself: "Accountability starts when silence ends." That week, Forbes ran a new cover. It wasn't about wealth this time. It was about legacy. The headline: "She didn't just buy a seat. She restructured the airline." In the executive suite of Airsphere's headquarters, flight status boards no longer just showed departures and arrivals. Now they showed audits. A new column had been added. Compliance verified? Yes. No. Pending. Flight 918 marked under governance review. It didn't matter that the plane had already landed in San Francisco, because for Violet Vaughn, arrival wasn't the goal. Systemic reversal was. 3 days after Jaden returned home, Violet launched what her inner team called the Flight Reversal Package. Phase 1, Immediate review of all removal incidents from the last 18 months, starting with those involving passengers of color, teenagers, and non-English speakers. Phase 2. Every discretionary staff decision, upgrades, reseatings, pre-board denials, must now be logged and reviewed weekly. Phase 3. She offered funding, not from Vaughn Capital, but from her personal foundation, to create a real-time equity monitor integrated directly into flight management systems. You track wind speeds, she said in a shareholder briefing. Now you'll track bias. Inside AirSphere's midweek strategy call, the CEO rubbed her temples. "This can't be real," she muttered. "It's very real," said the COO, "and it's already being adopted." "By who?" He flipped his screen. "Delta, Amtrak, a private charter firm in Austin, even a hospitality chain in Dubai had reached out to license the tech. The name? The Vaughn System. Bias is weather. You can't eliminate it, but you can measure it and prepare." Meanwhile, back at home, Jaden sat at the breakfast table, quietly scrolling. "Mom," he called out, "you've got a mention in Teen Vogue and Harvard Business Review." "That's the full spectrum," Violet said from the kitchen, sipping tea. "They're calling you the Sky Architect." She raised an eyebrow. "Too dramatic." Jaden looked up from his phone. "Not really." He said it casually, but with something heavier underneath. She knew that tone. She sat beside him. "You okay?" He shrugged. "I'm not mad." "I know. I'm just tired of needing you to make them listen." Violet was quiet for a moment, then said, "So, let's build something where they listen on their own." And the next day, on a private video call with AirSphere's new diversity task force, Violet opened a document. Directive, In-Flight Equity Implementation, a 3-month timeline, fully operational changes, live testing on selected routes, real passengers, real metrics, real consequences. Every time a ticket is flagged for possible removal, she told the team, the system will ask, "Would you make the same decision if this person looked different?" And the agent will have to check yes or no. And if they click yes without thinking, they'll be audited, she said flatly. And if they click no, they'll get training, or they'll get gone. On her next flight, Flight 2042 to New York, Violet boarded quietly. She wore sunglasses, jeans, no team behind her, just one carry-on. At the gate, no one flinched. The staff greeted her politely, checked her ticket, walked her to 1A, no second glances, no awkward silences, no assumptions. But in the crew galley, her name was whispered. "That's her," someone said. "The woman from 918. She's the one who wrote the rule book we're using now." And midway through the flight, something rare happened. A young flight attendant, new, clearly nervous, approached Violet's seat. "Ma'am, may I say something?" Violet looked up, removed one earbud. "Yes? I just wanted to thank you," she said. "I'm half Filipina. First week on this job, someone mistook me for cleaning staff, but ever since your policies came down, it's different. Like I'm finally seen." Violet's eyes softened. "What's your name?" she asked. "Emmy." Violet smiled. "Well, Emmy, welcome to the flight deck." The rest of the flight was smooth, but in the systems below, everything had changed. The boardroom at Skylux headquarters was a glass fortress 32 stories above downtown Chicago. Normally, it hosted quarterly earnings calls and dry PowerPoints about fuel efficiency, but not today. Today, every seat was filled, with CEOs, general counsels, VPs of operations, and one woman who didn't work for them, Violet Vaughn. She sat at the far end of the table, in a matte black blazer with no logo, no name tag, no title, and yet everyone in the room knew who ran this meeting. "Let's begin," Violet said, tapping the table once. The sound echoed. "Today's agenda is not about apologies. It's about architecture." She clicked a remote. The main screen lit up. "Emergency policy corrections. Stage I. presented by Vaughn Foundation Oversight Division. Then another slide. Title, The Injustice Cost Curve. $14,000 per mishandled rebooking, $38,000 per public discrimination complaint, $2.3 million average stock drop per viral incident, and finally, it costs nothing to not assume a black child doesn't belong in first class. A rustle ran through the table. Someone coughed. The CEO of Aero Atlantic cleared his throat. Ms. Vaughn, we're committed to improvement, but some of these proposals, third-party monitoring, live policy logging, they're going to take time. Violet leaned forward. You run an airline. You move 300,000 people a day across weather, borders, and time zones. She let the pause stretch. And you're telling me equity is too logistically complicated? Her chief of staff handed out printed packets. Each was labeled Vaughn Protocol, Rapid Compliance Model, 90-Day Integration Plan. Inside was a line-by-line reform guide, real-time ticket validation logs, anonymous bias reporting forms, optimized for mobile, flag-based removal, alerts monitored by external compliance firms, passenger dignity rating, a post-fleet survey metric that now impacted crew bonuses. The VP of HR for Skylux raised her hand. We've seen backlash from union reps. Some feel this is a disciplinary trap. Violet didn't flinch. This isn't about punishment, she said. This is about measurable behavior. Your people aren't scared of change. They're scared they've been seen. Across the table, a younger exec whispered, "She's not even raising her voice." "Doesn't need to," someone replied. "The dead is the voice." Then came the hammer. "I want full protocol adoption across all Stratosphere Holdings partners," Violet said. "No opt-outs, no delays." "And if we can't hit your timeline?" one CFO asked. She looked at him, dead calm. "Then I reallocate Vaughn Capital's $820 million 0 cents annual travel account to competitors." The room froze. "Hotels, rideshare airline partnerships," she said. "I'll shift it all." Silence. Then a slow nod from the Airsphere CEO. "We'll adopt it, all of it." Skylux followed. Then the regional operators. One by one, they fell in line, not from fear, but from recognition. This wasn't just PR. This was a new kind of shareholder activism, one that measured dignity like profit. As the meeting wrapped, Violet stood. She didn't give a closing speech. She didn't demand applause. She simply looked around the table and said, "You're not just moving people anymore. You're representing what it means to let them belong. Don't make me show up twice." When she left, the boardroom sat quiet, not stunned, rewired. 3 weeks later, in a modest HR office at a chain hotel in Baltimore, a memo hit the internal inbox. Subject line, "New check-in policy, Vaughn Compliance Model V1.1. It wasn't a surprise. Not anymore. Down in Miami, a bus driver for Atlantic Coach leaned against the terminal wall, sipping coffee. On the wall behind him, a new sign had been taped next to the break room fridge. Passenger dignity equals compliance. Racial profiling equals immediate review. Report violations anonymously here. He read it once, then twice. He didn't say a word, but he nodded. In a high school gymnasium in Oakland, a group of black students gathered with their guidance counselor. She handed out flyers that read, "Equity in transit equals equity in access." Guest speaker, Violet Vaughn. Topic, "The sky isn't the limit anymore, it's the starting point." Across industries, the story of Flight 918 had evolved from viral moment to blueprint. Major airlines launched what they called dignity dashboards, showing real-time stats on discrimination reports and resolution times. Amtrak overhauled its passenger escalation training, using Violet's language word for word. 2 hotel chains licensed her software. 3 bus companies adopted her reporting model. Even Uber sent a request for partnership. At the University of Chicago, a sociology professor adjusted her syllabus. Week 11, Case Study, How One First-Class Seat Shifted American Transportation Equity. She printed an extra 15 copies. Demand was rising. A TV producer pitched a docuseries. Netflix bought the rights. Title? Seat 3A. And in the comments section of every article, something new was happening. People weren't just reacting, they were sharing, "My son was denied boarding last year, no explanation, I just thought it was random. Now I wonder, I work at a hotel in Phoenix, this story changed how I check my bias." Watching Violet Vaughn reminded me that Black motherhood isn't just nurturing, it's nation-building. Meanwhile, in a private meeting at the Department of Transportation, a senior policy advisor spoke over a folder stamped "Urgent." He pointed to a section labeled "Vaughn Model Recommendations Civil Aviation Reform." "If we don't act," he said, "the public will push it through anyway. She's already rewritten corporate policy. If we're smart, we follow." Violet never asked for fame. She wasn't chasing legacy, but when interviewed by Fast Company, she was asked, "Do you think Flight 918 was a turning point?" She paused, then said, "It wasn't a turning point, it was a mirror. A system can't fix what it refuses to see. All I did was make them look." And across the country, more people were looking, not just at Jaden, not just at Violet, but at every hallway, every checkpoint, every policy that was really just a dressed-up version of "You don't belong here," until now. 5 months had passed. It was a quiet Sunday morning in New Orleans. Jaden sat alone on the porch of his grandmother's shotgun house, legs stretched out, notebook in hand. The same notebook his mom had given him after the incident. Plain black cover, no logos. Inside, a list of moments. Some big, some invisible, all unforgettable. Page after page. The stare from the gate agent, the quiet gasp from the woman across the aisle, the look Mom gave before she turned around. The first time the seat didn't feel like a gift but a right. From inside the house, his grandma called out, "You still writing, baby?" "Yeah, just about done," he replied. She walked out, a mug of chicory coffee in hand, sat beside him. "You know your mama changed things, don't you?" Jaden gave a soft smile. "She didn't just change things," he said. "She named them." In Washington, D.C., a small ceremony was being held, not televised, not glamorous, just necessary. A plaque was installed in Terminal C of Reagan National Airport in recognition of Violet Vaughn, whose courage reminded the nation that dignity should never be delayed and justice should never need a boarding pass. Next to it, a quote from her keynote in Chicago. "Your appearance should never be mistaken for an error code." Back at Vaughn Capital HQ, a young intern adjusted a framed letter in the hallway. It was from a former flight attendant. "Ms. Vaughn, I used to believe staying quiet was professionalism, but watching you, I realized silence was just protection. For the wrong people. Thank you for breaking the code. J.M. Now Director of Equity Operations." In schools across the country, the Vaughn Protocol had been added to case law studies. Jaden's story wasn't a headline anymore, it was curriculum. But Violet? She stayed out of the spotlight. She didn't write a memoir, didn't go on book tour. She simply built. Every week another call, another system audit, another quietly forced rewrite of how respect was defined. She didn't run for office, she didn't sit on a throne. She sat in boardrooms, in terminals, in systems, and she never asked for acknowledgement. Because the real legacy wasn't what they said about her. It was the next black child who sat in 1A and no one blinked. And that was how a mother grounded a plane and gave flight to a generation. Thank you for listening all the way through. To me, this story isn't just about power. It's about awakening. We live in a world where one glance can decide if a child is welcome or seen as a threat. But when that mother stepped in, not with noise but with knowledge and ownership, she reminded us, you don't need to raise your voice when you own the building. This wasn't a story of revenge. It was a blueprint for restoration, and it shows us something powerful. Change doesn't always start with a crowd. Sometimes it starts with just one woman who refuses to stay quiet. If this story moved you, if you saw yourself or someone you love in it, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Because these aren't just stories. They're reminders that we are not powerless, and the more we speak them, the harder it is for the world to pretend it didn't see.